I'm going to talk a little bit about hexaflexagons, and there's some here that you can make, but I only have enough scissors, so if you want to quietly cut out your pattern whilst we're talking, that's perfectly good. So there's a plain one like this. There is a For Gardner one that's a complicated one, but not too complicated, and then a plain pattern one. Or a different kind of long skinny one like the For Gardner one, but it's blank. And you would just cut out the strip on the side. Okay, well, why don't I start by saying thank you so much for coming. This is like so thrilling because it's like almost a completely new crowd, and that's really exciting. Maybe we'll have to get a bigger room at some point, Tim. But so thank you to Tim for setting up this room. He found it 3 years ago when we started this, and it was like, how can I find a space that we can, have a projector, talk, versus being at a restaurant where you don't want to disturb other diners. So this was like the perfect place. So thank you. And unperfect, that's right. So the Gathering for Gardner Celebration of Mind is an initiative that we started 3 years ago in 2010. And it was the year that Martin passed away. So he passed away in May of 2010. And there was another gathering in Atlanta in the United States that was started 20 years ago by a gentleman named Tom Rogers, who sadly passed away this year of cancer. But he started the Gathering for Gardner in Atlanta 20 years ago, and it occurs every even year, so every other year. And that was what the video showed at the beginning, was the people there. And my first Gathering for Gardner in Atlanta was in 2008. And it was a thrill because suddenly I was in the presence of these incredible mathematicians like John Conway and the people you saw in the video, Bill Gosper, the magicians. And it's basically a gathering that Tom started 20 years ago to celebrate Martin's passions. So they're mainly mathematics, magic, and puzzles, but also skepticism. He's written some amazing Lewis Carroll pieces, and so he really has a broad reach. And so when Tom started, it's by invitation only, and these people started traveling from all over the world to come to Atlanta, and it's about 300 people at this point. And it's so cool that, for instance, I got to know John Conway just by talking to him, not about mathematics, because I only have an undergrad in mathematics. And but we would talk, and then last year in New York Toy Fair, we did a thing right before a puzzle party, and I saw him, and I walked in to say hello to him, as I do, and he saw me coming, and he said, "Hello, Tanya, how are you?" And I was like, almost fell over, because I was like, oh my God, John Conway knows who I am. So it gives opportunity for like regular people to like have the opportunity to meet and hang with the really incredible mathematicians and others in the world. So because some of you may or may not know Martin, that piece was a nice snapshot of who he was. But in 1950, he started writing the column in Scientific American called Mathematical Gains. And his first piece for Scientific American was on hexaflexagons, and which is what we're going to talk about tonight. And the hexaflexagon article, they got so much response that they approached him and said, would you consider doing a regular column, because you've obviously hit a nerve with our readers. And so Martin was currently working and writing for a children's magazine called Humpty Dumpty, and he quit that and started writing for Scientific American, and did so for 25 years. And during that time, he had mathematicians commenting and contacting him about his column. And so he was working and talking and communicating with what became very famous mathematicians, but might not have been when they first started, communicating with him when he was writing his column. So I came connected with Martin because I was a big fan. I wasn't really old enough to be the ones that were reading his columns regularly because they were published. I was 5 when he stopped writing. But I was a big fan and knew, because they're all in books now. And someone said, well, I know, actually my boss at Think Fun said, I know Martin Gardner, would you like me to do an introduction? And I said, oh my goodness, I would love to meet Martin Gardner. So it started with a phone call, and I thought this was my one-time chance. I was going to talk to Martin Gardner. So I talked to him for like 45 minutes. He was amazing. He was giving me advice and telling me stories. And then at the end, I just said, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. And he said, well, I really enjoyed this, Tanya. Why don't you call me again tomorrow? And I was thrilled. And so I started calling him every couple of weeks after that. And eventually he said, well, if you're ever in Oklahoma, come by for a visit. And I booked the next plane and went and visited him and started visiting him each year until he passed away. So I was really honored that I could consider him a friend, and was very sad when he passed away. And it really affected me. And a lot of people, when he passed away, were like, what can we do? But they didn't want to do another gathering that year, or they wanted people to be able to celebrate but not have to travel. So we came up with the idea of a global event called the Celebration of Mind, and that's what you're attending tonight. And this weekend there's events, and we kind of stretched out the time. I'm chairing the committee, where it's like from October to December. There's parties called the Celebration of Mind, Gathering for Gardner, Celebration of Mind, all over the world. And there's currently over 100 events, and there's events at Stanford University, at Princeton, that have 500 people attend. And then there's parties like this that have a smaller number, but we consider them all just as important because we're celebrating the things that Martin also loved. So I thank you for joining the event, and hopefully I'll keep doing it at Essen if you are a regular. And you're mostly all inventors, or authors, so you have a lot in common. So I think that is everything that I wanted to say at this point, so I'll go on. You don't have to talk as long as I do.